in the Vedic rules, there are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions of punya, or special work in which the result of one's previous action may be applied. Thus, one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here, because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually. And in that purified state of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc., may be accepted, so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 46, we find it is stated, Yatha pravitra bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he does not know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the supreme cause by the sacrificial method. End of the purport. Vrindavane Ramanareti Prasada Gumo Tatrapi Krishna Balarama Supada Mule Gyanam Puram Parama Krishna Sudharma Chittam Dandastadeva Prabhupada Namo Namaste. Sansara Tukka Jalada Upadita Sikama Krodadina Kramakorai Kavalikutasya Durvashana Nikatitasya Nirasrayasya Chaitanya Chandra Mamadehi Padavalambam Jaladara Shashivarno Gopavesha Kishoro Sahachara Gana Vrindai Kridamana Vajesho Natavara Chittave Sho Nilapitam Baradyo Jagadacharana He To Rama Krishna To Asmi Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasana Bevacha Vitanam Pavani Bhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So basically, this shloka is talking about doing something good for somebody else, for punya fall, basically punya karma, giving up the results of your hard-earned labor for some philanthropic work. It's interesting. Many people like to do stuff, welfare work, and they think that's religious. But Prabhupada really was not interested. Just like people think that helping out the poor by giving food is good, is religious and good, like that. Jayadvaita Maharaj didn't like it. He said, food for death, not food for life, food for death. Food for life. For me and my wife is the joke. Is the joke, you know. Prabhupada really was not interested in. There's a lot that can be said about welfare work. Sometimes people open hospitals and schools like that, but or like in Vrindavan Food for Life program, they have for helping Brajavasi children, and so many things like that. Care for cows, so many things like that. Like this. Prabhupada really wasn't interested in it. Like that. It goes on. People do, it goes on. But Prabhupada was not interested in it. Prabhupada said, you shouldn't distribute only in the hurricane or the flood or the poor person. Everybody's a poor person. Even the rich person is a poor person. He also needs prasad. So instead of food for life, he said food for all. Prasadam should be for everybody. Even the rich person and the poor person, like that. But still it is something is better than nothing, you know, like that. If you're stuck, if you're forced to. Just like, for example, one bhajan about Krishna Balaram, there are very few. Dr. Sanyal was talking about Vaishnavera Musulmaner Kavi. There were basically 19 Muslim Kavis. They were closet Vaishnavas. They were stuck in a body. They were Muslim bodies and like that. They may have been their relatives, and they probably had a lot of peer pressure at the time, but they were closet devotees. Nasir Mahmud was an example of one. In the 15th century, he wrote a very nice bhajan about Krishna Balaram, and it's really interesting. So it's a very traditional bhajan, naturally, and so I was one person who was really into Bengali bhajans, one lady, and her husband, who comes and goes. He's based in Brooklyn, New York, and like that. So I asked her about this bhajan. I let her hear this bhajan, and she goes, it was sung by one famous Bengali bhajan singer in Bengal, Suman Bhattacharya. She goes, Suman Bhattacharya is a Mayavadi, like that. She was saying, it was very funny. And so I played it for her, and then it got some akar in it, meaning extra lines in it that are not in the bhajan, really. And it said, I listened to it very carefully, including the akar about it. It said, Nasir Mahmud, Korotoas, he is desiring Korotoas, Sharana Sharana Dhanari, the shelter, the wealth of the shelter of your lotus feet. He goes, Telona, don't give him, don't refuse. Goes, Javana bole keno pai teluna. Why should you refuse? Seeing me that I'm a Yavana, pai, why should you refuse? Like that, pai, telona. Don't give him up. Don't be like that. Don't be like that. It's interesting. Javana bole keno pai telona. Why should you give me up because I'm a Yavana? He said, telona, don't give me up. Don't refuse. Like that. It's interesting bhajan. It's interesting bhajan. Nasir Mahmud bhajan about it. Huh?
Don't give me up because I'm a what?
Don't refuse because I'm a Muslim. He's a Muslim. He was born in a Muslim family. Yavana. Yavana bole keno pai telo na. Why you're saying Yavana? You're saying a Yavana. Don't reject me. Don't reject me. Pai telo na. Telo na means don't give me up. Don't reject me, like that. It's interesting. We're all fallen in some are more fallen, some are less fallen. It's a question of degree. So it's interesting, bhajan. It was written in the 15th century, glorifying Krishna and Balaram. And basically, it's the only bhajan I heard that's glorifying Krishna and Balaram. It's far out. Like this. It's pretty far out. It's pretty interesting. There's some people. There were 19 Musulmaner Kavi. Dr. Sanyal was talking about. Akbar was one poet. He wrote poetry. The famous Salah Bega was actually, he was born of a Brahmini that was abducted by a Muslim warrior, and she was a widow actually. Her husband died, and so she was a young widow. She was a beautiful young widow, and so this Muslim warrior kidnapped her and made her his wife. And so the child that was produced was Salabega. So Salabega was a Yavana, was considered to be, because he was a Muslim's offspring. So he wrote a lot of bhajans glorifying Lord Jagannath in Puri, and they're still now very famous, you know, like that. There's also another Selva Pillai in Melkote, a very small deity. It's a size Utsamurti, and the story was pretty interesting. That Srila Ramanujacharya asked the big deity, "Where's your Utsamurti?" And the Lord told him, "He's in Delhi." So then Ramanujacharya took a jata, a procession of pundits, and went to the Sultan in Delhi and asked him, "Hey, we want this deity back." And the Sultan says, "We've broken so many temples, and you know, you go into our treasury. If you find your deity, you can have him back, you know." So the Muslims kept Hindus as their prime minister because they won't revolt. That's the idea. So then he wanted him back. He said, "I searched everywhere in the treasury, but I couldn't find him." So Srila Ramanujacharya did meditation on the Lord and asked the Lord, "Where are you?" And the Lord told him, "I'm with the Sultan's daughter." Now here's a trick. The Lord was with the Sultan's daughter. The Sultan's daughter was worshiping the deity in her private quarters. So that was really interesting. So then Ramanujacharya told the Sultan this, that the deity says that he's with your daughter. And so now it's a test. That what are you going to do? You know, and the daughter was not ready to give up the deity. And you know, at the same time, the Sultan promised the sadhu that he can have the deity if you find him. So then the prime minister, the Hindu prime minister, goes, "Well, if the deity can talk, then he can walk." You know, then if the sadhu is so Srila Ramanujacharya said, "Oh, Selva Pillai, oh child Narayan, please come." And the Lord came and walked and sat in his lap. And Srila Ramanujacharya embraced the deity and got out of there real quick. Now it must have shocked the Sultan, you know, the deity. And so this girl, the daughter of the Sultan, had like this deity. And so Srila Ramanujacharya got out of it really quick because he thought, Muslims can't be trusted, like this. So the story was there that, and it was right. The king sent his army after it because the daughter was complaining, oh father, I want my deity back. So he was going to rob the deity and get the deity back. But Srila Ramanujacharya went very quick and the king couldn't catch up to him. So finally they went to the border of the kingdom in Karnataka. And so then, because one boy had the hots for this girl, wanted to help her out, and marry her like that. He had the hots for this girl. So it was described that they both went to the border. And then they said, well, we didn't catch him. We have to go back to Delhi now. The army was going to go back to Delhi. But they slipped under the border and they went in. And they went into Karnataka. And then when they got to the place where the deity is, Selva Pillai, then she made a hut there and she stayed there. And they say that at night she goes and sees the deity, anyway. And the deity sees her, like that. And once a year, Gaur Purnima time, they put this crown on the deity, and the deity goes around on a car street, basically from 9 o'clock until 3 in the morning. And it's got the Aniruddha Kirti. That's an interesting story. They told me a story about that crown. What happened was the Lord in the ocean of milk was snoozing, and he put his crown down. And then when he woke up, his crown was nowhere to be seen. And he asked his Lakshmi, "Hey, did you see my crown?" She says, "I've only been massaging your feet. I don't know. Who was the last person who was there?" It turned out to be Bali. So he said, "Bali's stolen my crown." He told Garuda, but he's a devotee, don't beat him. So Garuda had a fight with the Bali Maharaj over the crown, and they were pulling on the crown for 1,000 celestial years. And finally, Garuda yanked the crown away and went away. and then Garuda was thinking, why I should go all the way back to Vaikuntha. Here in Braj, Krishna and Balaram are there. So he gave it to them, and the crown went, and the boys put it on Balaram, and the crown went, whoop, like that, to fit Balaram's head. And everybody was in stitches laughing, and then they took it, Balaram took it off his head and gave it to Krishna, and then when the crown went, whoop, like that, fit Krishna's head. And then all the boys were in stitches, and he said, "What should we do with this crown? Give it to Nanda Maharaj's Narayan deity." And so during the Kurukshetra battle, then Balaram was doing Tirthayatra with the Brahmanas, and they gave that deity at that time. So Balaram went down to Melkote and he said, "That deity is just, our deity is just right. Our deity in Dwarka is just right for this deity." So it's called in Sanskrit Yadavagiri, the mountain of the Yadus. So Krishna and Balaram went there after the battle of Kurukshetra, and Krishna saw, well, it's true, and he gave the deity in charity. So that's an interesting story about that deity. It's an interesting story that actually Ramachandra was worshipping that deity. There was a Brahmana that wouldn't do anything without saying Lord Ramachandra daily. So he gave that deity. So he told Lakshman, give that deity to him. So later on, that deity came in disciplic succession down to a girl. And that girl was given from the Chandravamsa to the Suryavamsa, like that, as a dowry, to make an alliance between the Suryavamsa and the Chandravamsa. So this girl was given, and part of the dowry was the deity was given. So that was interesting, how the deity came in that line, and with Krishna and Balaram and Nanda Maharaj like that, and then they gave the deity to in Melkote. Very interesting story, how they gave the deity. And now, basically, there are 4 lakhs of people that come to see thee. And Lakshmi Tatachar told me personally that actually it's not the Aniruddha Kirti. It's actually, people would like that. This is the original crown, that it was in the ocean of milk. We're not going to disturb their fate, but actually the crown says on the side of it, 1297. It's basically the year that Srila Ramanujacharya was there. He says, so this was made, this is a duplicate. It's like the crown, like the original crown, but it's not the original crown. But we ain't going to say nothing. We don't want you to say nothing either, because, I was hoping to do an article for the Bhakti Guided magazine. So I was there, I was interviewing this thing. And it says, if you have devotion, you see it as a diamond. And if you don't, then you see it as a lump of coal. 4 lakhs of people come from Bangalore, and 1 lakh is Muslims. They come. Why? Because of Bibi Nachar is at the feet of the deity. This Muslim girl, this murti of this girl is there. Bibi Nachar is there at the feet of the deity. Again, it's very interesting. And this deity goes around on Cart Street from 9 o'clock at night to 3 in the morning. Then they pack up the crown and it goes back to the treasury of Mysore, the king of Mysore. It's quite an interesting story about it, the deity. So some people do, they do welfare work. They like that. They think it's religious. They think it's good. And they like to open schools and hospitals, and they do like that. And they give money. So even if one is forced to do so, you're a Muslim, you're a closet Vaishnava, you're a Muslim, or you're whatever you are, and your relatives don't agree, then give something in charity. By giving something in charity, you're making some advancement. That's the idea. You're making some advancement by giving in charity. Your hard work, your you're becoming purified like this, and your hard work is becoming purified. Eventually you'll come to the stage of Krishna consciousness. So some people, they like to do that. They like to open hospitals and schools, you know, or feed the poor like that. They like to do that, these kind of things. These punya karma like that. But devotees don't have to do that, really. You can do anything you need to do. Some devotees are doctors. They have to do that because they're doctors in the daytime. But they're actually devotees. They're doctors. Everybody has their job, and you got to pay the bills, like that. So they have their job. They're doctors, but they're really devotees. Actually, they're devotees. They're doctors. They keep that as a side business. And so some devotees, they like that. They set up hospitals for them and like that, because people will give to the hospital. They won't give for the devotees, but they'll be happy to give for the hospital, to start the hospital. And hospitals are okay if they get a bunch of devotees and they work there. All right, like that. But they're actually devotees. They live as devotees and like that. It's cool. Bombay, one of my friends, Braja Haridas, told me that we don't go to Bhaktivedanta Hospital. Why? He goes, it's really menga, it's very expensive. We go to, there's a devotee disciple of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Everybody calls him Hinduja Hospital Das, because he takes people there, like that. And he knows everybody in Bombay, medical man under the sun, and he helps you out. If you have some problem, he helps you out. He takes you there, helps you out. Gets it free, gets it cheap, gets it nothing. and much cheaper than you can do in some other hospital, Bhaktivedanta Hospital. We don't go there because we get it cheaper in some place. It's interesting, One keeps it quite interesting. So Lakshmi Tatrachar, I took prasadam in his house at that festival. And he told me that story because he wraps up the crown every time. And it goes back to the kingdom of Mysore. And he told me, actually, it's not the Aniruddha Kirti. We don't say nothing because we don't want to disturb people's faith. They think it's the real thing. And lakhs of people will come and see the deity. 4 lakhs of people at night will come and see the deity. And 1 lakh is Muslims. They'll come from Bangalore because of this Murti Bibi Nachar is at the feet of the deity. Very interesting story about the deity, about how the deity got there, about Bibi Nachar, the whole story. The whole story is interesting. So sometimes people are forced by circumstances, like Sanyal was talking about. Vaishnavera, Musalman or Kavi, there were 19 Kavis, poets that were closet, they were Muslims. They were Muslims. They were closet devotees, but they were Muslims in nature, So it's very interesting about that. Or Kuch. Is there any questions? Insert the devotees.
What about Rajasthan? Can you tell about Rajasthan? Rajasthan.
Muslim Kavi Rajasthan.
In Braj. There was one Muslim Kavi by name Rajasthan.
Rajasthan?
Rajasthan.
Vrindavan.
Microphone.
So it is mentioned somewhere in the 17th century, some Brajvasis they went to Delhi to give one Bhagavad Katha. You know that there was one Yaunak, his name was Ras Khan. So he overheard this about Gopal. You don't know about Ras Khan's story? Very, very interesting.
Oh, but the thing about it is that, look,
his samadhi is there in Gokul, And this Pushti Mark, he's one of this thing in Pushti Mark. He's also considered as one Vaishnava.
The thing is this, that this is 17th century, right? Way before now. Now it's 21st century. So anybody in the 17th century was better than us, had better moral principles than us, you know. It was very interesting. In Bombay BBT days, we had most of our Bhagavad Gitas and books were bound by Muslims. But I was thinking that they actually have, when they do their tapasya, Ramadan and like that, when they do tapasya, they're actually better than the Christians, you know. I thought, the Christians don't have any values. At least the Muslims have some values, you know, have some morals, have some values. So that's not so bad. About this one, oh, they're everywhere. It's actually described that sometimes during the Holocaust, 70 years ago when the Jews were being killed by the Nazis, that even some of the Muslims were keeping the Jews hidden away, you know, and protected and hidden away and provided for, you know. It's interesting. Or the Gentiles, the Christians were doing that, where some positive people were doing it, were keeping Muslims, were keeping the Jews from being killed by the Nazis, like that. So it happens. The Muslims do it, the Christians do it. It's like basically it was human rights. The person should not be killed. That's the idea. It's interesting stuff. That some of the righteous persons were actually Muslims. Interesting.
Can you pull that microphone?
Ras Khan is there. You've heard of him, you haven't heard of him. Basically, it's what is their philosophy? Like Srila Prabhupada was talking about in the book Dialectical Spiritualism, about different philosophers. What is their philosophy? You know, like that. So, that's the thing. So it's the same kind of thing about the Muslims, that these Vaishnavas, Kavis, that what is their philosophy? You know, that their philosophy, if you can see it, some Vedic knowledge in it, you can't accept it for what it is. But if they have a different opinion than what the acharyas say, then we beg to differ. That's all. It's kind of like the same kind of thing that, like Tulsi Ramayana, you know, you can't tell a Bihari not to chant Tulsi Ramayana. He was probably weaned off it, you know, of Tulsi Ramayana when he was a young child, you know. So you can't tell him that is bogus. Now, so at the same time, that which can corroborate with Valmiki Ramayana. Prabhupada says, Valmiki Ramayana, not Tulsi Ramayana. So, Valmiki Ramayana, if you can corroborate that with what is said by Tulsi Ramayana, then you can accept it. And if not, then it's his interpretation. That's all. And we beg to differ. We only want to go with what Valmiki says in the Sanskrit there, in that Ramayana. I was shocked. I was in Bombay once when Radha Govinda was doing some katha, some Ramayana katha, and everybody and his brother, 600 people, knew the shlokas of Tulsi Ramayana glorifying Ramachandra. That was impressive. So, if you can corroborate it with Valmiki Ramayana, then you can accept it. That poetry is nice, can be accepted. And if it's not, if you can't, then, well, we beg to differ. We'll just stick with what Valmiki says, like that. It's very interesting. I was impressed that everybody in the room, 600 people, knew this glorification of Ramachandra from from Tulsi Ramayana about Ramachandra's beauty, about Ramachandra's marriage, and like that. They knew. It's very interesting stuff, you know. If it corresponds with Valmiki Ramayana, then we'll accept it. If it won't, we'll reject it. Or kill. I think that's it. Hare Krishna. Hey, this is dangerous. It smells good, but the problem is that if you have wet cloth during rainy season or something like that, lag jayega, the color will stick to you. But white is good. White is good. Safed is good. White is good. Also, another thing is probably smaller garlands. Smaller garlands that are white are good. You're not going to give out only a white garland, just like Mogra is Lakshmi Sakshat, Padma Purana says. It's not bad, you know. Mogra is nice, but you're not going to give Krishna only a white garland. You have to set it off with some of the flowers, some tulsi. The night before Kamsa died, he saw in a dream that his head was gone, he was smeared with oil and wearing a white garland. White garland means please die quick. That's not what we mean. So set it off. Kamsa, he had a dream that he was naked, his body was smeared with oil, his head was lopped off, and was wearing a white garland. White garland means please die quick. It's not what we mean. So that's the idea. Set it off with some tulsi, some other flower, some other color, like that. Like this. It's actually Lakshmi Sakshat. Mogra, belly, is actually Lakshmi Sakshat. But you shouldn't offer only a white garland to Krishna. Some other color should be there to set it off. These are really, really dangerous. You know? Another thing about it is that these gulab malas, they fall into pieces. They fall into pieces and scatter all over the floor. It's a mess to clean it up, you know. Lovely, lovely mess, you know. Divine mess. Give it to somebody. They give you a girl, give it to somebody else. It's their problem, not yours, you know, like that. And when it falls apart, or another thing that you can do is that you can push it down. You can push it down like this, you see? You can just push it down and then tie it up. Tie it tight. You can push it down and tie it tight. The idea of it is that the garland will, when you hold it tight, it'll keep it from falling apart.
Rather than make us to make money, just put less number of flowers there.
Or something. Oh, look at the flower, already falling apart. Already falling apart, look at that.
Maharaj, white flowers have the green stem. They're not really white.
Yeah, one thing, there's a useless flower. There is a useless flower which they sometimes have that has no fragrance at all, completely Kali Yuga, completely no fragrance at all. That flower should not be offered to Krishna. Useless flower. Should not be offered. That's totally useless.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.